Good afternoon. I am just going to check that I'm live on Facebook. Yes, I am. Okay. So I wanted to just come and talk to you a little bit about the process I use to support people in getting clear with themselves and becoming an energetic match for the kind of relationship that they really, really desire. I'm going to run through this fairly quickly. So my invitation to you is to save the video and save it and just use it later, so that you can pause it and you can write down any of these questions that seem like they would be supportive for you, because it's all in the self-work. And once we learn to take responsibility for our experience, then we get in command of what is actually going on around us, and we start to see the connection between how we're showing up and what's showing up for us or not. So I operate on a few premises always that they underpin all the processes that I take my clients through. The first one is that everyone has sovereign choice. So I don't believe that you should ever be in control of another human. I don't believe that anyone ought to be always in power. I think that we each have sovereign choice, and we're free. We're free to do whatever we wish. And sometimes that's hard to take, but that's the way it is. They're free, you're free. That's my number one premise. So following on from that, I guess section B of that is that you are at choice. So with that in mind, you are always in a position to choose whether you want to remain involved or you want to exit a situation or a relationship. You are always at choice. You might not like the choices that present in front of you, but you do always have them. So that's a really important piece as well. So I just want you to keep these in mind as like the bedrock of what I'm about to go through with you. And really, I'm talking to those who know that they have a disposition for partnership. I am of the mind that there are very few people who are not built this way, who are built to be lone travelers, if you like. I do think they exist, but it's certainly not my path, and I don't think there are many who are genuinely meant to be lone travelers where it's not coming from trauma or reaction. So this is for the women who are seeking sacred partnership, divine union, whatever you want to call it, your soulmate relationship, and are maybe confused as to why it's not here yet, or maybe there are patterns running that you just haven't quite identified and isolated yet, and similar things keep showing up for you that are less than ideal and that are quite hard to deal with. So I'm basically going to give you nothing held back, and I always say this: don't hold back the systems that I have developed over the years and the processes I use. I don't hold anything back. There's no secrets. I can lay it out for you all day long, and you can run with it and you can go and use it yourself. It works. Or you can choose to come in and get support from someone who does this for a living and who's been through all the iterations of this whole process. I call it the spiral process. And the reason I'm a good guide is because I have made all the mistakes, and will continue to make some mistakes because I'm an imperfect human. However, I have a very specific lens and view on this that is born out of deep experience and inquiry and a high level of self-responsibility, which means that I can get you there quicker. So whatever is your choice, this is for you to use, to take with you, so that you can do the self-inquiry work and you can actually move yourself from where you are now to a place of becoming a clearer energetic match for what it is that you really want. So we covered two of the foundational pieces. Everyone has sovereign choice. That means you are at choice. The third thing is that it's your job to be responsible for your experience. So you can't co-opt, well, you can, but it never ends well. You can't co-opt anybody else into taking responsibility for your experience and you just throwing your hands up and being a damsel and being like, oh no, I can't possibly handle myself. You do it, please. It's too hard. That's not going to be an even and balanced relationship. It's not going to feel good at the end of the day. So this is about self-responsibility, not toxic hyper-independence. Those two things are really different, but it's about you just taking ownership of your experience and of who you came here to be and of what you want. So I'm going to run through now the spiral process, which has 4 distinct parts. I'm going to give you some questions, and just bearing in mind that although this is laid out as a process and it's laid out in a linear way, that's purely for translation purposes, and it's for you to understand the 4 different elements. So when I work with somebody, we're all over the place. We're in and out of all these 4 different pieces at different times and in a different order. It just depends what comes up. They interact, they dovetail, they connect. All these pieces connect together. I'm going to run through it in this order because it's easier to understand. And also, when you're being introduced to this as a process, this is the order. So you do need to have part 1 addressed first before you get all the way down to part 4. You can't do part 4 until you know part 1. Once you know the process, then you can skip about within it and you can look at which piece is coming up and which piece needs your attention, etc., etc. Okay, so the first step of the spiral process is intention and desire. And it's one of my favorite ever coaching questions. What is your desire? Because if you don't know, you're going to be tossed around on the tides and what's that Alice in Wonderland quote about where do you want to go? Well, I don't know. Well, if you don't know, then it doesn't matter which way you go, because you could end up anywhere. So the first part of this process is, what is your intention? What is your desire? What are they? Do you know what they are? Have they changed? Are you clear on them? Secondly, what are the ones that you are not in approval of? Because there will be some. You will have some sneaky desires that you are not in full approval of. And what will happen is your subconscious will find a backdoor way to get those desires met. So, for instance, if you have a desire for a feeling of containment, because you realize that you have big energy. If you don't admit to that desire, if you don't claim it and own it, what might show up is scarcity. So it might show up, your need for restriction, your need for holding may show up as lack of money, lack of resources, controlling, people who are controlling of you. That's how you perceive it. So there are, once you own it, once you own that need, then you start creating your own structure. Once you own the need for containment, because you realize the size of your energy and the truth of the bigness of who you came here to be, you will know that you need to create your own structure. You need to create your own safe parameters in order for you to be effective at whatever it is you choose. That's just one example. There are many, many, many. So the third question, what are you not in approval of, and how do you know? How do you know? It's always a brilliant question. How do you know that? Because the reason it's a brilliant question is because sometimes we can just get it slightly off, and we can say that this means that, when actually that's not necessarily so. It's just not necessarily true. So just check in with yourself there with that question. How do you know? Fourth question, how are you already claiming and honoring your desires? How have you already taken ownership of them within your life as it stands right now, without anybody else, without an intimate partner in it? How are you owning, acknowledging, claiming your desires right now? Because this is the difference between you living a life that you enjoy anyway, and any partner coming into it being a happy bonus addition, or you collapsing into a potential partner because you think that everything that you want is over there, and it's not, it's in here. So where are you creating from your desire? Where are you claiming and owning your desire already in your life? And if you can't find anywhere, I would seriously sit with that question. It's important. The last question on this section is, if you have identified desires that do lay outside of you, what is your next step in manifesting them? Where do you need to get internally aligned? What actions do you need to take? How do you need to address your energy? Are there adjustments that need to happen? Or are you just perfectly happy? Like, I'm in trust, it's coming, it's okay. I don't need to force, I'm just in the flow and it's all good. Because either answer is perfect, as long as it's true. As long as it's true. Okay, second section of the spiral process is body wisdom. This is a great one because so much of your truth comes from your body. Your subconscious runs your body and is responsible for so many of your systems. And if you are not in touch with your body wisdom, you are missing the majority of intelligence that you possess, and intuition and deep knowing and lots of things. So my first question here is, what is your resting state? If you take an example chunk of time, like the last couple of weeks or the last month, what is your resting state? What does that look, feel, and manifest as? And there are so many labels that we can use, you know, can But the labels are kind of, it's almost like a laziness. So if you were to not use a label, but go into description, sometimes that can be a lot more accurate and a lot less loaded. So for instance, instead of saying my resting state is anxiety, you could say my resting state is quite a lot of tension in my shoulders. I'm breathing up here at the top of my chest. I'm finding it more difficult to get to sleep, and once you start describing in that way, you start to get more good information that you can actually do something with, rather than imagine like that statement landing, my resting state is anxiety. It just makes you want to go, oh shit, like really? Oh no, like that's bad. And you immediately want to make a judgment on it. Whereas if you start to get really detailed about without the label, then it's information, and it's neither good or bad. It just is. It's just information. So it's just feedback. And then you have the option of like, oh, is there something I could do here to address this? If I'm not happy with it, if I'm not enjoying it, and I would prefer a different outcome, is there something in my power that I can do? And it becomes a lot wider, it becomes more open when you do it that way. So that's the first question. The second question is, what sensations in your body let you know that the core emotions have been activated? So the core emotions generally are love, fear, anger, disgust. What else? I wrote these down so I didn't forget. Happiness and surprise. So how do you know, how do you know in your body when each of those has been activated? What does your body do? And this is just like reading a book, it's like, oh, I know that when anger has been activated, that I feel hot in my belly, I feel hot in my face, and I feel strong in my arms and legs, for instance. Okay. See if you can identify those easily, because this is it all makes the foundation of self-knowledge that helps you to steer your ship towards what is wanted. And I mean, that's what we're doing here now. Like, we're here to enjoy it. We are alive on this planet to enjoy it. So surely anything that helps us understand how to do that is a good thing. The next question is, once you have noticed that these core emotions have been activated, well, two-part question, how do you let them run their course and actually take up space and be allowed space and express? And then after that, how do you self-soothe in order to return to your equilibrium, which is your desired resting state? And how do you know when you've done this effectively? It's the same question again. How do you know? Like, how do you know that you have actually resumed equilibrium or a resting state that's not in reactivity or hyper aroused in this kind of activated nervous system way? How do you know? How do you judge that? Because there must be a way that you measure. Take a breath. So that's body wisdom, and those are the questions. The third part of the spiral process is mind mastery. And the way I do this is in an embodied way, because you cannot master your mind without including your body. One of my favorite quotes from Ram Dass is, if you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family. And it's so true. It's like, you can think all these high thoughts and you can be all like conceptual and above it all, but then when you get triggered, or when you enter into something that feels unsafe or that feels unknown or any of those things, the first place you're going to feel it is in your body, not in your mind. So in order to master your mind, yes, there are certain questions that we need, but we need that previous step of body wisdom in order to understand what we find. Otherwise, we're just lost in intellectualizing and conceptualizing, which is not really, well, it's not the full human experience. So some of the questions for mind mastery are, what is your narrative? And here we look at, what is it that you believe? Because this is going to color your view of everything that happens. So one of my beliefs is that people, for the most part, are good. And that colors my beliefs massively. It colors how I walk in the world. It colors what I expect from people. It colors what I make stuff mean. So that's one of mine. What's your narrative? What is an underlying belief that you know that you carry? And sometimes you have to dig a bit deep for these. Sometimes you have to really go into it, and what greets you might not always be pleasant. You might be like, oh shit, I didn't know that I believed that. Actually, I didn't know that. Actually, I believed everyone was out to get me, or I believed that nobody could ever understand me, or, you know, just, can you sit in that? Can you be honest with yourself about what your narrative is? Because when you can, it helps you understand a hell of a lot of things about how the world works from your lens, from your perspective. So following on from this, the second question is, what are your assumptions? So what do you assume when you go into an interaction, when you go into relationship? What do you assume? And is that serving you? So similar question, kind of turned the other way around. The third question, may be the most important one, and this is where I find embodiment really, really helps and comes into it, is how do you observe the story? Because you know you've got stories running, right? You know that that's how the mind works. It never, ever stops, and it's always churning stuff over. How do you observe the story and not become a hostage to it? So better said, how do you not believe everything that the mind delivers to you? How do you stay open? How do you leave space and make room for multiple truths and multiple possibilities? How do you do that? That is a ninja trick. It really is. And when you get embodied, once you have the benefit of these previous steps in the process, particularly the body wisdom, it becomes a lot easier to separate out who you know yourself to be and all of the programming that is running in your mind, all the stories, the whole film. You know, I think of it as like you're at the cinema and there's like all these scenes going on, and it's just like, okay, I'm in the audience, I'm not actually in the scene, and that scene is going to end and there's going to be another scene. So how do you step back from what you're observing and what's the word? Individuate from the story that you observe and understand who you are at the heart, at the soul of who you are. How do you do that? And is there a way that you can practice using your body that will help you with that? I have several, because I mean, seated, this is just obvious, like seated meditation is the most challenging way to meditate ever in the whole world, because we're not designed to be statues. We're designed to be breathing, living, doing, being, and like movement is part of that. So for me, movement is essential in putting me in a meditative state, and it actually really, really helps me to drop in and to go very deep. So what can you do to understand that delineation between who you are and the stories you're observing? And this is your mind mastery. And this is a question you can always land on when you feel really triggered and you feel really like something out there has got you. Yeah, it's like it's got you hooked. Whether it's something that you really want to reject and push away or something that you really want to cling on to, this is the place to go. All right, so the fourth part of the spiral process is conscious communication. This is one of my favorite things ever. And I'm always learning, and it's just always fascinating to me how we misunderstand each other and our potential for translating and conveying our deepest feelings and allowing and letting another human being see us and hear us and feel us can be one of the scariest things ever, but it also is one of the most beautiful things ever. And it's just so delicious. That feeling of being seen and heard, witnessed, and just like, I get you. I get you. And that feeling is connection. That's what everybody wants. Every regular human being wants that feeling, because we need each other. And not in a codependent kind of weird way, but in an interdependent human way. We need each other. So it's essential that we can develop the skills so that we can express and so that we can listen. So a couple of the questions here. First, most important one is, how clear are you? How clear do you think you are? Okay, and now go check in with your closest ones and just check that you're accurate in your assessment there as to how clear you are. And there are many different areas that you can have a look at for clarity as well. So you could be clear in your language, but you could be really muddy in your energy. So, and I've had experience of this, really painful experience of this, of you can say the thing and you can mean it, but if you're not clear with yourself, if you're not like aligned, if you're not in agreement with yourself fully, your energy can be doing the opposite to the words that you've spoken and meant to somebody else. And that's just leaky energy, and it's just you not being connected up internally. So have a look at all the areas. So it's your language expression, your emotion, your energy. And if you know that you're good at one, do you then discount the others? Like, oh, that's okay. Like I'm really good in person. I'm really good with my energy. So it doesn't really matter about written communication or verbal communication, because like I do it by feeling, because that's what I like and that's who I am. Are you doing that? Can you find a balance? Because everybody communicates slightly differently and everyone has their preferred means of communication. You know, some people are very auditory, some people are kinesthetic with they want to touch and they want to really, you know, everyone uses their senses in a different way. So if you are to assume that it's okay to just stick with the one that you are most comfortable with and the one that you find the easiest, then don't be surprised when sometimes that will lead to miscommunication with other people, because that's not how they communicate. It's like love languages. You all know the love languages. What's your love language? If you're an acts of service kind of person, and someone else is words of affirmation, and you find it really hard to use your words, like, it's not going to be very compatible. So here we come again with this interdependence. And it is this like, okay, yeah, I get that. I understand that. And I'm willing to expand my experience to include these other ways, because I know it's going to benefit my connection capability. Okay, next question. Do you have and know your boundaries? Are you clear on those? Which includes, do you know your yes and no? Do you know what feels like a yes to you? Do you know what feels like a no? Do you know in a different way to feeling? I always say feeling because I'm a feeling kind of person. Maybe you are more intellectually ordered in that way, but whichever way, do you know them? Are you quite clear on them? Can you listen well? Can you listen and hold space for somebody else's experience and for their expression? And what does that mean to you? Like, again, how do you know? How do you know if you can do that really well? Final question, which is one of the most important questions ever when it comes to connecting with other humans, is, can you repair? This is one of the foundational pieces that I forgot to mention at the beginning, but it's working from the knowing that everyone is going to fuck up at some point, including you, including me. So, can you repair? Are you able to go back in when disconnects have happened, when things have messed up? Can you apologize? Can you hold space for the explanation of the disconnect? Can you be okay with what is needed from both parties in order to, at some point, come back together and reconnect? Can you be all right with whatever is needed? So being able to repair is one of the most valuable skills in human relating that ever was, because we're all imperfect, we're all going to mess up. And if we don't know how to repair, or if we find it so challenging that we just won't do it, then what happens is you have a rupture and you have a disconnect, and that you never speak to that person again. Like, that you fully disconnect and disappear from each other. And that is so sad and so painful. So being able to repair, or finding out what is needed in order for you to make repair, is super important. And this is not to say that sometimes you won't go, do you know what, it's better off if we do not stay connected. Like, yeah, absolutely honor that. But talk about it and like express and do it consciously. There was a trend for a little bit a few years ago, and it was termed conscious uncoupling. I don't know if people still use that phrase. I find it a bit gross, to be honest. I don't know why, but it's very easy to understand. It's like, if you are not going to be with someone, then honor what you've had, be clear about why you're walking away, and move on. And that's being conscious about it. And I think the reason it's so challenging is because it's very hard to look in the face your own behaviors and actually look with clear sight at what went down. So I wonder, how does that feel to you? What are your repair skills? So those are the 4 points. You've got loads of questions there to work with. Like I explained at the beginning, I go through this in order when I work with clients at the beginning so that they know the process. But as we continue to work together, you'll revisit, sometimes in really random orders, different sections of the process. And the reason it's called the spiral process as well is because you get to different layers of truth as you go along. So maybe the second, third, or fourth time you're revisiting mind mastery embodied, for instance, you will find stuff that you just had no clue was there. You'll be like, wow, this is next level. And I honestly feel like we keep doing that until we die. You know, we just keep revisiting these next levels, next layers, and continuing our evolution. And a few years ago, when I devised this process, it was because that's how I saw it in real life. That's how I saw the initial journey, as starting with intention and desire. Secondly, getting in touch with your body and what's happening there. Thirdly, your mind. Fourthly, conscious communication. If you think about it, it's really, really almost impossible to communicate consciously if you don't know who you are and you don't know what you want. Like, how's that going to go down? It's not going to work. So there is an order for a reason. And once you have a baseline knowledge of the process, then you can revisit all the different spots of it. So I'm going to leave it there. And just to let you know that I do have some one-on-one spaces for mentorship for women. My program is called Elevate, and there is an application which is edifying in itself. I'll put the link below. Have a little look through the application. It will give you food for thought, if nothing else. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you another day. Bye-bye.